When it comes to firearms, it is paramount that you handle them safely. Firearms are dangerous. They're deadly when misused or mishandled. And so it's very important to follow certain safety rules when it comes to your firearms. There are a lot of new gun owners out there, and there's different type firearms that you need to consider. But all of these safety rules will go whether you're looking at a revolver, a semi-automatic, a shotgun, or a rifle. Now, when my grandfather was 2 years old, his father, my great-grandfather, was killed in a hunting accident. And they were out hunting. He was with his best friend. His best friend loaded a shotgun, and when he slammed it home, it fired. My great-grandfather happened to be standing in front of him, and it killed him right there in the field. Guys, handling firearms, again, it needs to be handled safely. Guys, the first rule of safety is to always point your firearm in a safe direction, even if you know it's not loaded. I've been in a number of gun shops where people are looking at guns. You know, they're handling it, they're looking at it. They're not thinking about me standing next to them on the counter, and then they've got that thing pointed at me. Now, most of the time they're not loaded, but there have been instances where people have been shot because they thought it was unloaded. And so go ahead and drop your magazine. Now, this one's loaded because we're getting ready to shoot. And check the chamber. Go ahead and bring it back. Take a look down in there. Put your finger down in it to make sure it's not loaded. And then we're going to drop the slide. Now, one of the things a lot of people think is that if they just drop the magazine, the gun's unloaded. And that's not the case. This gun can fire with one in the chamber without the magazine. Rule number 2 is very similar, is to treat your firearm like it's always loaded. And so again, we've already talked about that, but make sure that you're treating your firearm as though there were one in the chamber, again, even if you don't think there is. Now, rule number 3 is to keep your finger out of the trigger. Now, what I like to do is to keep my finger right here on this frame, and as soon as I finish shooting, and you'll watch me, I'll put my finger right back here. It's a natural response because I do that every time. Whenever you pick up a firearm, don't touch the trigger. Go ahead and put it in your hand like this, and until you check it to make sure. And then even then, you don't point it at anyone, even if you know that it's not loaded. One thing definitely for sure is if you're having any kind of issue with your firearm, never look down the barrel because sometimes it can be a misfire and it can delay for a few seconds and then fire. So make sure that you're not looking down the end of your muzzle. Number 3 is to always make sure of your target and what's beyond. Your target, don't ever point a gun at anything you're not intending to destroy, and of course you don't necessarily want to destroy your target, but make sure that it is something that you can shoot. Now, if you're shooting steel, you need to make sure that you remain at a safe distance back. With a handgun, they say about 25 yards. With a rifle, 50 yards. Because that steel, even though when it hits it and it knocks it to the ground, it can come back and pop you. So make sure that what you're shooting at is legitimate for a target and not something that's going to come back and pop you. Now, there's a lot of thick woods that go behind this berm, but it will not stop a bullet every time. If it glances off, it can go, it can spin, it can go in different directions, it can ricochet. And so don't trust just because you have a stand of woods that you're safe to fire into it. A few years ago, we had a friend of mine that came down. We were going to the beach and we had shot down here a number of times. He decided he was going to shoot in a different spot where there were a lot of trees. And what happened was when he shot, he actually went through someone's home on the other side of those woods. So nobody was hurt, but just make sure that you know your backstop. Dirt is one of the best things that you can shoot into because a good berm will stop the bullet. Now, making sure that you have eye protection and ear protection. I have my glasses. These are actually ballistic glasses, so they're going to defeat especially little bullets that are coming back and popping you in the face. And so this is going to protect your eyes, which is super important. Also your ears. Doesn't matter if you're even shooting just a .22. It will do damage to your ears. So make sure you have proper hearing protection. And we're going to look a little bit more at that in a minute. I'm just using some earplugs right now, but there are other types that are great. My slide's in the rear position. I'm going to take my magazine, enter it in, and then I hit the slide release. Now I'm ready to fire. My finger goes right here above the trigger until I line up my sights. You'll notice that my finger went right back to that same spot, and then I bring the pistol down. So just keeping that finger out of the trigger. There have been so many accidents where people have shot and then turned around with the finger still in the trigger and have fired another round. Now when the magazine's empty, the slide will hold back to the rear. But if you want to stop shooting before that time, drop your magazine, which this one's empty, but there's still a round in the chamber. We're going to reinsert our magazine. You'll notice that the slide came to the rear position. This makes it much easier to check, but guys, you should always check to make sure that your guns are unloaded. I mean, you've almost got to be paranoid about it. Just keep check of it, make sure, because it'll be worth it if you ever end up accidentally shooting someone because you didn't check to see if you were loaded. Hey guys, there's a lot of hearing protection options. I mean, you can go with just the foam plugs. They do a decent job, and then we have some standard flange plugs, which I personally like. But then I have some Walker, and these are inserts, and they fit right into your ear. They have Bluetooth capability. They're electronic. One of the things about electronic hearing protection, just like these Walkers, is that you can turn them on and you can hear what people are saying. It even amplifies the sound around you. But then there's a baffle in there that when it reaches a certain decibel, it shuts off. So while you're shooting, you know, it protects your ears, but then when you're talking, you can hear very easily. And then we have just the standard hearing protection like this, which you can get about anywhere. And so guys, make sure that you do protect your ears. And again, protect your eyesight as we've shown. Now guys, you've made an investment. These firearms you can hand down to generation. And so you need to make sure that you keep them properly maintained and lubricated. There's a ton of different cleaning kits out on the market and different oils and lubricants that you can use. I'm not going to necessarily endorse any of them. I use Break Free, and I also use Ballistol. And I use Hops number 9. But there's a lot of different kits out there, and there are a lot of videos on how to clean your firearm. But guys, you want to make sure it's properly maintained if you ever need it. Now, securing your firearms is extremely vital to gun safety. You have small children around, that can definitely be a problem, or somebody breaks into your home and steals your firearm. Most guns now, in fact all new guns, are required to have some kind of safety lock mechanism. It just goes through the trigger guard like this, and it secures the trigger. And so that way it's safe, you can't access the trigger, and really this would be more towards young children or people that really shouldn't have access to a firearm. But a safe is definitely the best way. There's a lot of lock boxes, there's some other things. But just make sure you keep your firearm secured when you're not there. But you want something that you can access it quickly if you need to. And with that being said, it's best not to keep loaded firearms around that are unattended. We do keep loaded firearms around for self-defense, but we make sure that we keep them out of reach of especially small children or those that just don't need to have them. And guys, no matter what, never mix alcohol or drugs when shooting a handgun. This is very dangerous. It's something you need to be completely sober when doing. And while Captain Morgan may be a swashbuckler, don't be influenced by him when you're shooting your firearm. Now, we have a representation of all the major handgun actions in front of us that are currently being used. First off, we have the revolver, and this is a double single action revolver. This was used by police agencies all up into the 80s before they went to the semi-automatic. It's a very proven design. It's very reliable. Now, this is the Ruger GP100, and the first thing we want to do is make sure the gun is unloaded. So I'm going to open the cylinder. There's a cylinder latch. Check, look, and it's empty. This is a double single action revolver, and that means that when I pull the trigger, it actuates the hammer. It goes forward just like that. And every time I pull the trigger, it'll fire. There's 6 rounds represented here. Some revolvers have more, some have less. But this also can be used in single action, which means I can bring the hammer back and it rests on a notch. It makes the trigger pull a lot less. And so it makes it easier for accuracy. So I just pull the trigger and I can fire it. This is in .357 Magnum, which will also take 38 specials. Next, we have a single action revolver, and this is a Ruger Blackhawk in .45 Colt. And you load it right through this loading gate, 1 bullet at a time. Now, if you'll notice, when I pull the trigger, it does not move the hammer at all. This is single action. So each time that I fire the handgun, I have to pull back on the hammer, and then I fire. Next shot, pull back on the hammer. And these were used in the West back in the 1800s. I mean, this was primarily a cowboy gun. Very simple, very robust, and again, very reliable. Now we're going to a double action semi-automatic pistol. This is a Beretta 92. It's 9mm, and this was the U.S. military sidearm from 1985 up until present, been replaced by the SIG P320. So let's go ahead and drop the magazine, make sure it's unloaded, check the chamber. Now you load your magazine and then you enter it into the pistol and then you rack the slide and it goes forward. It is ready to fire. You'll notice this hammer is in the rear position and it does have a safety right here. So you go ahead, this is actually a decocker, so we're going to drop it and I'm going to push it back up. Now on this, being double action means that when I pull the trigger, watch the hammer moves. But now after the shot is made, it'll actually go back and then you're in single action. And single action has a much shorter trigger and it's actually a little easier when you're shooting accuracy. And plus, it's easier to get second, third, fourth follow-up shots. So it's only on that first shot that it's double action. And then it comes back again, and then you're ready to go. And it just keeps doing that until the ammunition runs out. Next, we have a single action semi-automatic. And this is in the 1911 style. It's a Metro Arms 45 ACP. Make sure the gun is unloaded, drop the magazine, check the chamber, always check, not only visually, but you can also stick your finger in there and just make sure it's loaded. Now when you pull that hammer back, you'll notice that it's in the rear position. And I'm going to go ahead, then you can fire the pistol. Now, this is a single action, so when I pull the trigger, it doesn't do anything with the hammer. You can see it's in a locked position. To fire it, of course, you just rack it, and then you're ready to fire. If you drop the hammer, then it's not going to fire. If the hammer is in the rear position, you have safeties right here and you can put it up, engage it, and then you're not going to fire as well. And this is called cocked and locked. One in the chamber and then you have your magazine full. And to fire it, just drop your magazine and you can start firing it. This was used from 1911 up until 1985 by the U.S. military as their sidearm. Not necessarily this configuration, but it was a Colt 1911. Now last but certainly not least, the Glock Model 45. This is in 9mm. It is a striker fire single action pistol. And this is really what most of the handguns right now that are being sold are, the striker fire. Let's go ahead and make sure the gun's unloaded. We're going to drop our magazine. We're hitting this little latch right here, bring it back, and the gun is empty. Now with the striker fire, you are ready right now to fire. There's no hammer, and so what you do is when you pull it, there's a striker in here and the firing pin has been cocked. And so when you pull that trigger, it'll fire. And then subsequent shots just come forward and you can fire again. So it's a very simple design. Now, one thing about this particular handgun and many of your striker fire pistols is there is no external safety. And the only safety you have is right here at this trigger. Now you'll notice this little blade, and the blade hit anywhere but the blade, it will not actuate the trigger. You've got to actually hit that little notch or that little blade to be able to fire the handgun. Here with this Taurus G3, make sure it's unloaded. With this one, we have an external safety. It's a striker fire, but it still has a frame safety right here at the end. Plus, it has a trigger safety. And so this just gives you some added safety features. And there are a number of different gun companies that make striker fire pistols with the frame safety. Now again, guys, firearm safety is paramount. Whether you're a beginner or if you're a seasoned shooter. Guys, sometimes we can get complacent if we've been handling firearms for a long time. And it's really important to follow those certain safety rules. So be safe out there and have it ready so you can protect your family. Or you can just go hunting or plinking at the range. Firearm safety covers all those. Guys, be safe out there. Guys, if you depend on a firearm for self-defense, whether concealed carry or even home defense, having some kind of legal protection is vital. I'm a member of the USCCA. I've been a member for the past 3 years, and it is just peace of mind. You know that someone has your back if you ever get yourself in a tough situation where you have to draw your firearm. If you are carrying concealed, you should definitely have some kind of legal protection. Now, I'll have a link down below in the description to the USCCA membership page. It is an affiliate link, and I know that if anything ever goes down, I have a friend with USCCA. Be strong, be of good courage. God bless America. Long live the Republic. And guys, when it comes, now you want to, and then it's locked in. They can't, okay, maybe they can. Okay, let's start this again. There is a live round in the chamber, but you should always check it. Now typically, why is this thing not doing? But for some reason, it's not going to do it. Without the magazine, oh, that's why.